Nietzsche lamented, "God is dead and we have killed him." He was writing in the 1880s. Around that same time, Dostoevsky wrote The Brothers Karamazov, where he presented a very, very strong case that if humanity loses religion and loses God, it would become unmoored from its place in the natural order. All sounds very highfalutin. What does this have to do with narcissism? What it has to do with narcissism is the proposal of an idea, which is that human beings are hierarchical in nature. We are tribal creatures. We're mammals. We travel in packs. We're mammalian pack animals. So we need to consider the ways in which we're a good or bad evolutionary fit for the environment that we're creating. Because unlike other mammals, we can alter the environment. We can create environments. By environment, I include like cultural standards and accepted patterns of behavior, taboos, everything within the environment, not just the physical. Because we're hierarchical by instinct, by biology, by our genetics, I think there's a pretty strong case for saying that if we, through our technological advancement, through our progress, in inverted commas, we got to the point where we said, hey, we no longer need God, we no longer need religion, then the problem that Nietzsche, a good German, and Dostoevsky, a good Russian, were pointing to is that at the top of the pyramid of hierarchies and at the top of the pyramid of priorities, there was something before, and it was God. And what does that mean? It means, by the way, this is not a sales pitch for religion. I don't think we can go backwards. I think the toothpaste is out of the tube. We just need to be aware of what's happened and then we can work to fix it, because I really, really believe that this is why we're seeing such an explosion in the reported incidents of narcissism and why people are developing such highly pronounced narcissistic traits and narcissistic interrelational patterns of behavior. When we say God is at the top of the hierarchy, yes, in some sense, that could have been a patriarchal, angry, warlord type figure, finger wagging, watching you, making sure you're not stealing or playing with yourself when you shouldn't be. But it was also mystery. And both Nietzsche and Dostoevsky go into this concept that at the top of the pyramid, if there is, quote unquote, God, then there is mystery. Then there is, through mystery, there is mysticism. Through mystery and mysticism, because God is unknowable and God is in a space that is beyond knowable space. We have all of our natural philosophy and science, and then at the boundary where we say, well, we just don't know and there's no way of measuring it, so we cannot know, then you have spirituality. So stick with me. If there is mystery and mysticism at the top of the hierarchy, if there is a mystery that permits you to live within a mystical space, it actually allows you to use different parts of your brain that allow you to have more empathy for the people around you, parts of your brain that allow you to have greater connection with nature, parts of the brain that are heavily related to artistic endeavor and creativity. You're still wondering how this relates to narcissism. If there is not mystery at the top of the hierarchy in which we're living in, then there must be something else. Instead of the unknown, there is the known. There is science. There is natural philosophy before it becomes spirituality, before it becomes mysticism, before it becomes, well, we don't know, but we have this felt sense of a connection with something, and we can pray, we can meditate, we can be silent in nature, and another energy, right? And you end up talking in these very non-scientific terms. And look at the way in which non-scientific in the modern world has become a pejorative, as though everything that is not scientific, not measurable, not known within a predictable, replicable, mechanistic way has less value. Where did we get that idea from? Where did we get the idea that the non-scientific has less value than the scientific? I would say that that is part of the new hierarchy of the new age in which we live. It's part of the coordinates. It is just that which is known, that which is replicable, that which is mechanistic, that which is functional, that which could be put into a factory is a value. Your dreams, your subjective experiences, the felt sense of being, the numinous, the spiritual, the mystical has no value. Dostoevsky and Nietzsche were not naive. They were not utopian. They knew that the church was full of abuse. They knew that there were, Dostoevsky writes amusing, in the Brothers Karamazov, you have the main plot, and then you have these sub-stories that go on. He has these amusing sub-stories about ridiculous monks who claimed that they would catch the tail of demons that were possessing old Russian babushkas, and they'd do this in exchange for money or in exchange for bread or in exchange for food. They knew perfectly well, and yet they still could lament the loss of something that made us intrinsically human. In the absence of mystery, when we have at the top of the hierarchy that which is known, how is it known? It is known through human ingenuity. When God was there, what was there? God's ingenuity. And you might go, well, this is puerile. Well, there's no daddy God watching us. Okay, but think with me in a theological way. Think with me as a psychologist and as a philosopher. Imagine you're not part of the human race and you're observing it. You've got one version of the human race that accepts at the top of the hierarchy of everything there is God's ingenuity. And then very, very quickly, within a matter of a few decades, the human race now believes that at the top of the hierarchy of everything is human ingenuity. One of the things that not knowing and just saying, hey, I don't know, which is one of my favorite phrases to say, hey, I don't know. You've asked me a question and I don't know the answer, because it makes me feel lighter, because it alleviates the ego. It alleviates the pressure on the ego to come up with a solution. It's nice to say, oh, I really don't know. I really don't know. Wow, that's cool. We could learn about that. We could explore that. There's mystery there. Whereas if you always know the answer, the ego gets heavy. It gets bulky. And it's a different feeling that you experience somatically in the body. There is humility written into the source code if God is at the top of everything. And I'm not saying which God, I'm not promoting a religion. Let's say the unknown, because God is such a heavily loaded word. The unknown is at the top of everything. The ingenuity of the unknown is at the top of everything. And I can say, wow. I can look at a mountain and go, wow. I can look at the stars and say, wow. I can look at other people and say, wow, and have real reverence and real awe for everything that there is in nature, including the human beings around me. This is important, and it relates to narcissism. When what is at the top of the hierarchy of organizing principles in humanity is human ingenuity, and it's all about what is known and it's all about what is measured, I'm not looking at a mountain and saying, wow. I can look at the mountain through, the lens of geology. I'm not looking at the stars and saying, wow. I'm looking at the stars through the lens of science and astronomy and astrophysics. I'm not looking at other people and saying, wow, because there's no wow there. There's no reverence there. There's no awe there. I'll butcher the Dostoevsky quote, which runs something along the lines of, the logic of it is, when we lose love of God and reverence for God, we lose reverence and love for each other. When we lose love and reverence for each other, we lose love and reverence for the self. And what it is replaced there is contempt. And behind that contempt is resentment. Instead of being in the moment of being, of part of God's creation, or the unknowable force that creates creation, the creator's creation, and we're one of that, we're part of that, we're now outside of it. We're in a very sick position. We're in a fractured position. We're in a psychotic, neurotic position. The observer, the controller. We fantasize that we're God in the face of this trauma. Nietzsche wasn't saying, God is dead, we have killed him, hooray! The full quote goes on to say, what festivals, what rituals, what distractions are we going to create that's going to wash our hands, figuratively speaking, of the blood of God and the guilt that we feel for what we've done? It's traumatic. What is narcissism? Narcissism is a grandiose, fantastical response to trauma. Why is narcissism propagating so rapidly in this culture? Because there is no God. There is no mystery. You and I are not part of a grand scheme. We're an evolutionary mistake. It just happened. It's not very likely to happen. And if it does happen, it should only happen for a few macroseconds and then it should disappear. And yet it continues to happen. I continue to be me. You continue to be you. And magic continues to happen all around us. But we're sick of it. We're bored of it. We regularly take flights and we fly in magic seats that fly across the sky, across the globe. And it's boring and it's stressful and it gives you dehydration and constipation and insomnia, even though you just flew in the sky across the fucking globe, like quite close to the stars. You can send memes to your friends with magic crystals that we all carry around in our pockets, and you can be in contact with anybody at the speed of if not the speed of light, at the speed of electricity. It's incredible. But we've lost that. If God is not in the place at the top of the hierarchy, then humanity is. And that is the downfall. That's the downfall. That's the beginning of broad-scale narcissism. I think narcissism has probably always existed as long as human beings have had consciousness and self-awareness and the capacity to speak. Narcissism probably is transferred and created linguistically. It's highly probable that it's a language-based virus, because language is how we construct our maps of reality. So pre-language, probably there wasn't anything that we would recognize as narcissism. Post-language, you can have narcissism. You can have the grandiose, self-serving fantasy that you are godlike in response and in defense of the trauma of losing your place in reality. The age that we're living in is a very, very strange one. The technological advancements that we're making give us more stuff, but give us less love. We should use things and love people, and we've moved into an era where we love things and use people. That's narcissistic. I'm one of these people online who's always like, oh, don't overestimate the rates of narcissism. Narcissistic personality disorder is still quite rare. But I would say the rates at which people are simply learning through context and through culture to become narcissistic is accelerating. So people have developed as a baseline norm, highly narcissistic interrelational styles. An interrelational style is just how you mix with other people, how you treat other people, how you think about yourself, how you think about other people. Highly narcissistic patterns of behavior, highly narcissistic worldviews. But what is the hollow God element of this? I think it's that God is dead, we have killed him, this is terrible, this is a tragedy. As Dostoevsky warns, if we don't have reverence for God, we lose reverence for each other and we start to hate ourselves. Most of you will be aware that the root of narcissism, the grandiosity, the self-love, the self-aggrandizement, and the demand for unmerited narcissistic supply is compensatory. And what drives it at root is self-loathing and deep, deep shame. So humanity has made a god of itself. Humanity has made a god of science and of technology. We ostensibly, apparently, created science and created technology. So even if you don't put humans, like a human at the top of the pyramid, or yourself at the top of the pyramid, if you are brainwashed, inculcated, encultured to think of science and technology as being at the top of the pyramid and human knowledge at the top of the pyramid, at the top of the hierarchy, it's still narcissistic because we created that. And it's not mysterious. It's not that it doesn't permit or value the mystical subjective experience of being human. In not permitting the mystical subjective experience of being human, it doesn't encourage gratitude. It doesn't encourage humility. In fact, it encourages its opposite. It encourages entitlement, and it encourages resentment, and it encourages Nietzsche's other concept that a lot of you will be aware of, ressentiment. The idea that somebody is to blame and must be targeted and must be scapegoated for the fact that I don't feel good and that I or my group is being somehow oppressed. And this identified enemy must now be punished. Now, if you think about all of our knowledge and all of the information that we have access to, when you see people move in groups, you'll see that we really haven't advanced that much from medieval times or pre-medieval times. Scapegoating is a pre-medieval practice. I think scapegoating is an old Jewish practice. I think it goes back 3,000 or 4,000 years. You put the sins of the tribe into a goat, and then you send the goat out into the wilderness to die a painful death from exposure. That's what a literal scapegoat is. I think there's a William Blake painting of that, if you fancy looking it up. Under those circumstances, people will become more narcissistic and they will treat themselves as mini gods. And you might say, oh, you're being euphemistic. You don't really mean that. That's poetic language. And yes, of course, you can take it euphemistically. You can take it mythically, but try and take it literally as well. In what ways do people treat themselves as gods? Do they make images of themselves, graven images of themselves, worship those images, and ask others to worship those images also? Literally and figuratively. The answer to that question is yes. Do they demand submission to cult-like, religious-like ideologies and narratives that if you don't submit to, you are punished and or outcast? Yes. These are religious, ideologically religious mini cults, and people are becoming mini gods, the hollow gods of a dying age. And this is a dying age. The fixations that we have now and the road that we're on now will not be the road that we're on in 100 years' time. It cannot be. You can ask any economist that. You can ask anybody, you can ask any sociologist that. The way we are living now, the prerogatives, the drives, the principles by which we're living now don't have sustainability. It cannot continue in this vein. So this is a dying age. That doesn't mean everything is going to be awful and we're absolutely headed to catastrophe. Catastrophe is always possible. It's always been hanging over us throughout all of human history. This is no different. I believe there are things that we can do to avert tragedy and to pull back from catastrophe. And one of the things that we can do is to recognize the age that we're in. This is an age of hollow gods, and that we should try not to be pulled into this, and that we should accept that we're not a very good evolutionary match for this environment. We're not a very good evolutionary match for this behavior. And that by deliberately and consciously, not naively, I'm not asking you to develop faith. Nobody can force themselves to have blind faith. But you can at least from our mechanistic perspective, our modern mechanistic perspective, see, hey, reverence and awe, even though I can't have it in the naive way that my ancestors used to have it, I can still remind myself to have it. I can still have reverence. I can still have awe. I can still be humble. I can still say, I don't know, and humanity doesn't really know as much as it postures narcissistically that it does. It can't answer the big questions. It has no idea what the answers to the big questions are. The really big questions are still in the realm of that which is not known. They can still only be answered by, or attempted to be answered by, the field of spirituality and occasionally quantum physics where they cross over. Knowing that, we can move forward in humility. We can move forward in gratitude. We can move forward in reverence. And hopefully, if enough people do that, then we can pull out of this narcissistic cult nightmare that we're slowly sinking into at the moment. Obviously, you're not a god. Obviously, the human beings around you are not gods either. You don't have to believe in God. I don't think that's a prerequisite, but I do think it's a prerequisite to say, we do not know why we are here. We do not know what caused us to be, and we do not know what is coming next. And these are the bigger questions. Ladies and gents, I have a new course. It is hopefully the last course I ever make. I don't think I'll need to make another one after this. I've set myself no time limits, no restrictions. I've treated it as though I'm doing face-to-face coaching with you. And so if I need to cover a topic and it needs to be covered thoroughly, I take the time to do it. At the moment, I think the course is around 15 hours long. If I need to make amendments afterwards, I reserve the right to do that. I will continue adding to this course for as long as I feel is necessary until I've gone, okay, that's it. That's me. I've said everything I can say about helping people to recover from narcissistic abuse. The course is a total roadmap, a total narcissistic abuse recovery roadmap from beginning, step by step by step by step by step to the end. The syntax of the course has been set carefully. You're going to ask in the comments, can I do this with my therapist? Can I do this with my counselor? Please do. Please do get the assistance of a qualified mental health practitioner, preferably one who has a very good understanding of narcissistic abuse, and they can go through the course with you and they can adapt bits of the course for you. If you do the course, I can't promise that all the problems will go away in a few months. What I would say is a realistic target is that inside of 2 months of working on the course, you would start to feel 80 to 90% better. That's realistic. And you might go, well, that would mean I only have 10% healing to do. Yes, my friends, but that last 10 might be an ongoing journey for the rest of your life. I want you to set your expectations properly. It's a very good course. I'm very happy with it. It's very thorough. It leaves no stone unturned, but it is a course. It's a course we do online. So there's a limit to how much it can actually do. Therapy is going to help as well. If you do these techniques and your therapist takes the techniques and adapts them for you specifically, it's going to be very, very powerful. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention. And I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Thank you.